All right, looks like we're live. Second for this second window to get going. All right, cool, guys. I'm super excited for this. Always super excited for this. Eliphas Levi, Transcendental Magic. It has been incredible so far. I didn't look ahead, so I haven't seen any of this yet. So I'm excited to see where we're going next. For those of you that have been following this, surgeries are scheduled for Monday. So that's finally happening. Appreciate everyone that has supported. We're still a bit buried, so I'm still very determined to raise funds both for the channel and to offset the medical expenses. So you'll find options to support in the descriptions of all videos and in the chat. And you can also become a patron and you get all kinds of wonderful perks if you do that. So we appreciate all of you guys. I just want to mention real quick before we jump in too that there has been a tremendous amount of validation lately regarding this hypothesis, I guess, that I have that the solar storms sort of catalyze our parapsychological capacities, right? These kind of experiences are steeply and sharply increasing. And I made some really interesting discoveries the other day, and I'm not going to get into that yet, but the Elon Musk takedown that I've been scheduling and rescheduling, and I apologize for last night, but the storms take out our Wi-Fi, so I don't have any control over that, but we are doing it tomorrow, and I will share this weird stuff that I uncovered in the course of my research into Musk. So, speaking of paradigm shifts, you know, this book has been full of validations of a whole lot of really important stuff to me, and I'm sure all of you as well. I'm not going to go through it all again because I've said it in every stream, but I'm sure most of you know that there are all sorts of incredible discoveries coming to us from morphology, from neuroscience, physics, that give a mechanistic basis for a universal mind of some type in nature. And a lot of the mechanisms for that were described by Levi and other adepts, really starting much earlier than Levi. You know, if you trace back all of the really explicit, you know, very specific elucidations of things like the atom, you know, coming from, was it Empedocles or Aristophanes or something, 2,500 years ago. One of the things you'll notice is that all of these people that have done this have been of the same lineage. The ones that have done it the most convincingly: Levi, Crowley, Albert Pike, Plato, Aristophanes. This is a trend that continues to this day. Your success is your proof. And initiates of this type of knowledge, this lineage, have left a trail. And the thing is, we're still a little bit ahead of science. So in the current moment, there is a lot of circumstantial or anecdotal evidence of these things. And the trajectory suggests that we will be in the ballpark of proof, solid, objective proof, sooner than later. And then once that happens, if we can make enough noise, we can basically disprove the foundations of this abject materialist paradigm that has been so destructive and toxic and limiting. So let me check in with the chat, make sure everything's kosher. I shouldn't have blown that screen up yet. Make sure we're all good. Small audience tonight. I hope we grow, man, because this stuff really deserves it. By the way, I am editing these, and I'm going to add video where there are relevant studies and whatnot. Edit those in, add more commentary. So I'm going to wait till we're done, but when you see those posted, you may want to watch it again because there's going to be a lot added. So we are on chapter 7, the furry sword. Fiery. Man, my eyes are really getting bad. The septenary is the sacred number in all theogonies and in all symbols because it is composed of the triad and the tetrad. The number 7 represents magical power in all its fullness. It is the mind reinforced by all elementary potencies. It is the soul served by nature. It is the sanctum regnum mentioned in the Keys of Solomon and represented in the tarot by a crowned warrior who bears a triangle on his cuirass, I don't actually know what that is, and is posed upon a cube to which 2 sphinxes are harnessed, straining in opposite directions, while their heads are turned the same way. This warrior is armed with a fiery sword and holds in his other hand a scepter surmounted by a triangle and a sphere. The cube is the philosophical stone. The sphinxes are the 2 forces of the great agent, corresponding to Jachin and Boaz, and the 2 pillars of the temple. The cuirass is the knowledge of divine things, which renders the wise man invulnerable to human assaults. The scepter is the magic rod. The fiery sword is the symbol of victory over the deadly sins. 7 in number, like the virtues, the conceptions of both being tied by the ancients under the figures of the 7 planets then known. All right. I just realized something. So when I started the stream, I mentioned that I had uncovered something interesting and I wasn't going to talk about it. But then I just realized that this is chapter 7. And this revelation has to do with the number 7. And we're not going to get into the whole thing now, but I'll give you guys a little bit of an overview. So I was looking into, I guess, the New World Order or something. I don't know. I was having a conversation or interaction with Grok about this. And I mentioned George Bush's speech where he said Saddam Hussein needs to heel to the New World Order. And he put his hand up, Hitler salute, and the audience goes crazy. Like, no one stopped and thought, what does he mean, New World Order? Doesn't he mean America? He needs to heel to America? That was September 11th, 1990. I didn't know that when I asked Grok this. Grok, put that in its response, and I was like, wait a minute. 11 years to the day before the Twin Towers? And then it hit me that the Twin Towers look like a giant 11. And I was like, wow, that's really weird. And then Grok said something about how conspiracy theorists say that there's some numerological significance of 11. So I was like, well, the 11-year solar cycles are a big thing, and 11 is a number of magical expansion. And so as these solar cycles intensify, our magical ability increases. Right? And it said, so you're pointing out that September 11th happened at the peak of one of these solar cycles. And I was like, no, that's not, I didn't know that. But it was, right? So it's important to note that that was solar cycle 23. We are now in solar cycle 25. In the occult, you reduce numbers to get to their essence, right? So 23, 2, and 3 is 5. That's the beginning of this cycle of the New World Order, right? Also, interestingly, not exactly related, but if you guys have seen my Synchronicity Stories videos, one of the big ones, my girlfriend was trying to draw something, and she was getting frustrated, and she had asked me about the number 11. We were talking about it, but she keeps like, God damn it, what the hell, and then finally she figured out that the problem was that there were 2 11s, and the second 11 was printed where the 23 was. So I don't know if that's related somehow, but it just struck me. My first 11/11 synchronicity had this thing in common with November 11th. So This solar cycle is 25, which adds to 7. And building 7 also fell when those two towers were hit. So I thought of the tarot attributions, and we'll go through them all in the next live stream. But every single 7 in the tarot deck, the relevance to the symbolism to what is happening right now is absolutely mind-blowing. Even the tower, which is the most obvious connection in symbolism, is 16, but 1 plus 6 is 7. So it's considered a 7 in essence. So come tomorrow and we'll go through this in greater depth. But also, by the way, something's going to happen. Some 9/11 type event at the peak of this solar cycle. So then I noticed that we're on 7, and clearly this is a place where our attention should be focused. Thus, faith, that aspiration towards the infinite, that noble self-reliance sustained by confidence in all virtues, that faith, which in weak natures may degenerate into pride, was represented by the sun. Hope, the enemy of avarice, by the moon. Charity, in opposition to luxury, by Venus. The bright star of the morning and evening. Strength, superior to wrath, by Mars. Prudence, hostile to idleness, by Mercury. Temperance, opposed to gluttony, by Saturn, who was given a stone instead of his children to devour. Finally, justice, in opposition to envy, by Jupiter, the conqueror of the Titans. Such are the symbols borrowed by astronomy from the Hellenic cultus. In the Kabbalah of the Hebrews, the sun represents the angel of light, the light bearer. The moon, the angel of aspirations and dreams. Mars, the destroying angel. Mercury, the angel of progress. Jupiter, the angel of power. Saturn, the angel of the wilderness. They were named Michael, Gabriel, Samael, Azael, Raphael, Zachariel, and Oriphael. These governing potencies of souls shared human life in periods which astrologers measured by the revolutions of the corresponding planets. But Kabbalistic astrology must not be confounded with judicial astrology. We will explain this distinction. Infancy is dedicated to the sun, childhood to the moon, youth to Mars and Venus, manhood to Mercury, ripe age to Jupiter, and old age to Saturn. Now, humanity in general subsists under laws of development analogous to those of individual life. On this groundwork, Trithemius establishes his prophetic key of the 7 spirits, to which we shall subsequently refer. By means thereof, observing the analogical proportions of successive events, it is possible to predict important future occurrences with certitude, and to fix beforehand from age to age the destinies of nations in the world. St. John, depositary of the secret doctrine of Christ, has introduced it into the Kabbalistic book of the Apocalypse, which he represents sealed with 7 seals. We there find the 7 genii of ancient mythologies, with the cups and swords of the tarot. The doctrine concealed under these emblems is the pure Kabbalah, already lost by the Pharisees at the time of Christ's advent. The scenes which succeed one another in this wonderful prophetic epic are so many pantacles, the keys of which are the ternary, the quaternary, the septenary, and the duodenary. Its hieroglyphic figures are analogous to those of the Book of Hermes or the Genesis of Enoch, to make use of a tentative title which expresses merely the personal opinion of the erudite William Postel. The cherub, or symbolic bull, which Moses placed at the gate of the Edenic world, bearing a fiery sword, is a sphinx, having a bull's body and a human head. It is the antique Assyrian sphinx, and the combat and victory of Mithras were its hieroglyphic analysis. Peach yogurt. Now, this armed sphinx represents the law of mystery, which watches at the door of initiation to warn away the profane. Voltaire, who knew nothing of all this, was highly diverted at the notion of a bull brandishing a sword. What would he have said had he visited the ruins of Memphis and Thebes, and what would the echo of past ages, which slumbers in the tombs of Ramses, have replied to those light sarcasms so much relished in France? The mosaic cherub represents also the great magical mystery, of which the elements are expressed by the septenary, without, however, giving the final word. The verbum inenarrabile, we'll say, of the sages of the Alexandrian school. This word, which Hebrew Kabbalists write, the Tetragrammaton, Yod He Vav He, and, or no, that's a Lam, Yod He Vav He. Okay, yes, it is. I forgot to read it backwards. And interpreted by not sure about that either. Thus expressing the triplicity of the secondary principle, the dualism of the means, and the equal unity of the first and final principle. Then further, the alliance between the triad and the tetrad in a word composed of 4 letters, which forms 7 by means of a triple and double repetition. This word is pronounced Aravita. The virtue of the septenary is absolute in magic, for the number is decisive in all things, hence all religions have consecrated it in their rites. The 7th year was a jubilee among the Jews. The 7th day is set apart for rest and prayer. There are 7 sacraments, etc. The 7 colors of the prism and the 7 musical notes correspond also to the 7 planets of the ancients. That is, to the 7 chords of the human lyre. The spiritual heaven has never changed, and astrology has been more invariable than astronomy. The 7 planets are, in fact, the hieroglyphic symbols of the key of our affections. To compose talismans of the sun, moon, or Saturn is to attach the will magnetically to signs corresponding to the chief powers of the soul. To consecrate something to Mercury or Venus is to magnetize that object according to a direct intention, whether pleasure, science, or profit be the end in view. The analogous metals, animals, plants, and perfumes are auxiliaries to this end. The 7 magical animals are, among birds corresponding to the divine world, the swan, the owl, the vulture, the dove, the stork, the eagle, and the pewit. Among fish corresponding to the spiritual or scientific world, the seal is a fish, the hell, the catfish, the pike, the mullet, the chub, the dolphin, the sepia or cuttlefish. Among quadrupeds corresponding to the natural world, the lion, the cat, the wolf, the he-goat, the monkey, and the stag, and the mole. The blood, fat, liver, and gall of these animals serve in enchantments. Their brain combines with the perfumes of the planets, and it is recognized by ancient practice that they possess magnetic virtues corresponding to the 7 planetary influences. The talismans of the 7 spirits are engraved either on precious stones, such as the carbuncle, crystal, diamond, emerald, agate, sapphire, and onyx, or upon metals such as gold, silver, iron, copper, fixed mercury, pewter, and lead. The Kabbalistic signs of the 7 spirits are, for the sun, a serpent with the head of a lion; for the moon, a globe divided by 2 crescents; for Mars, a dragon biting the hilt of a sword; for Venus, a lingam; for Mercury, the hermetic caduceus and the cynocephalus, For Jupiter, the blazing pentagram and the talons or beak of an eagle; for Saturn, a lame and aged man, or a serpent curled about the sunstone. All of these symbols are found on the graven stones of the ancients, and especially on those talismans of the Gnostic epics, which are known by the name of Abraxas. In the collection of the talismans of Paracelsus, Jupiter is represented by a priest in ecclesiastical costume, while in the tarot he appears as a grand hierophant crowned with a triple tiara, holding a 3-fold cross in his hands, forming the magical triangle and representing at once the scepter and key of the 3 worlds. By combining all that we have said about the unity of the triad and the tetrad, we shall find all that remains for us to say concerning the septenary, that grand and complete magical unity composed of 4 and 3. Now, I have very little to say about this because it's not really something that requires interpretation, except that the one thing is these animal symbols. When we hear of witches putting eye of newt and wing of bat in their cauldron, it's not because they suspect that or think that this part of this animal necessarily has some magical power. It's all about the symbolism. And one of the most powerful practices that a person can do in magic, and that it has efficacy as a therapeutic practice and for actors, musicians, maybe even writers, the assumption of God forms. And that has to do with wearing these animal parts, certain stones, burning certain types of incense, making the room the colors that we associate with whatever the essence of this entity, archetype, or deity is. Music, if it's the sun, if it's Ra, then hymn to Ra is playing. The room is plastered in gold, So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. Practice and encourage it because, David Bowie, for example, used to do this before he went on stage to get into character, depending on what the character was. Lots of people. Well, Maynard James Keenan from Tool used this a lot in the 90s. He seems to have settled on a specific character now these days. But back in the day, he had all these different characters and they would do these rituals before they went on stage. The other thing is, interestingly, the combination in music, you have the triad, which is the 3 notes of the chord. And when it becomes 4, the 4th tone that you add is the 7th degree of the scale. So you add 4 to 3, and that 4th thing is the 7. So this is something eventually I'm going to make a video about, but there are a lot of occult lessons that can be sort of mapped out and extracted from music theory. And again, the system that we used in the Western world was created by an initiate of this lineage, the Pythagoras. So before we get into the next chapter, let me jump into the chat and see if anybody has any input. What's going on, Asunder world? Yeah, we do need to raise consciousness. There's no doubt about that. And we are, where we can. The thing is, I don't want to get into this in depth right now, but we have some structural issues with making change in the world because everything generates its opposite. So, right now, there are more people that are capable of having profound, complex, metaphysical interactions, right? There are more sort of illuminated people than ever. But as that end of the spectrum gains momentum and mass, so does the other end of the spectrum. And you can see that happening in the world right now. So yeah, my focus has definitely shifted from hoping to have some kind of global impact, and I don't mean just me, but the entire movement, to focusing on individuals that have already heard the call. Because I kind of feel like at this point, we're in that sort of, like in the Bible, there's that thing, let he who is dirty be dirty still, and he who is clean be clean still. I feel like that's kind of where we're at, so... And don't feel selfish about it, because due to entrainment and entanglement, if you elevate yourself, you're bringing the entire net of being with you to some extent. So that's where our focus should be now, I think. Don't worry too much about trying to convince sleepwalkers. Just work on yourself and the people that are on your wavelength. Okay, so 8, realization, Hod Vivens. Causes manifest by effects, and effects are proportioned to causes. The divine word, the one word, the tetragram, has affirmed itself by tetratic creation. Human fecundity proves divine fecundity. The yod of the divine name is the eternal virility of the first principle. That is so wild. The little spermatozoa that is the yod, the first principle, the thing that impregnated the universe. Man understands that he was made in the image of God when he attains comprehension of God by increasing to infinity the idea which he forms of himself. When realizing God as the infinite man says unto himself, I am the finite God. So, that is super powerful and important. One of the practices that we do to prepare for the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram and other workings is to visualize yourself expanding larger and larger and larger and larger, and the earth below you becoming smaller and smaller until you're passing the stars and quasars, and the galaxies are becoming even tiny, until you have burst through the veil beyond the universe and merged with the macroprosopos, the divine Godhead. And the reason that you do that is because you are identifying yourself with that, because in this tradition, we see everything as equally God. And so you are affirming your identity as God of your world so that you can manage the energy within your microcosm, right? And another objective is that whereas in our society, people generally crystallize, by 35 or something, and they feel like they have their proclivities and their likes and dislikes and their taste in music and their political disposition, and they identify with all of these things, and that's what they are, and it's not changing. That's not natural. And so an initiate is trying to expand continuously and to evolve and change and grow and to remain in a state of fluidity, especially fluid intelligence and adaptability. It's not the strong that survive, it's the most adaptable. And so doing things like trying to understand music that you don't think you like, and if you find something tedious like mathematics to the point where you hate it, do it all the time until you don't hate it anymore. Some adepts have taken this so far that they would eat feces, or do anything that they possibly could to overcome bias of any kind. Because the true illumination is not this fluffy, sort of blissful detachment that a lot of Buddhists and whatnot describe from our point of view. It is the ability to see the universe from the eyes of the universal mind. And one way that this has been put is that the goal is to be like he in whom suffering and glory are indistinguishable. There's no preference. There's only the experience that you're after. It doesn't matter if it's pain or pleasure or, eating creme brulee or a dog turd. It's you are looking for that omniscience. And so you want to understand doo-doo from the point of view of a fly as much as you understand creme brulee from the point of view of a human, in order to have this sort of holistic experience of the universe. Magic differs from mysticism because it judges nothing a priori until after it has established a posteriori the base itself of its judgments. That is to say, after having understood the cause by the effects contained in the very energy of the cause, by means of the universal law of analogy. That was an important one. Let's run that one more time. Having understood the cause by the effects contained in the very energy of the cause. Hence, in the occult sciences, all is real. And therefore, and theories are established only on the foundation of experience. Realities alone constitute the proportions of the ideal, and the magist admits nothing as certain in the domain of ideas save that which is demonstrated by realization. In other words, what is true in the cause manifests in the effect. What is not realized does not exist. The realization of speech is the logos properly so called. A thought realizes itself in becoming speech. It realizes itself also by signs, sounds, and representation of signs. This is the first degree of realization. Then it is imprinted on the astral light by means of the signs of writing or speech. It influences other minds by reflection upon them. It is refracted by crossing the diaphany of other men. It assumes new forms and proportions. It is then translated into acts and modifies the world. This is the last degree of realization. Men who are born into a world modified by an idea bear away with them the impression thereof, and it is thus that the world is made flesh. Word is made flesh. The impression of the disobedience of Adam, preserved in the astral light, could only be effaced by the stronger impression of the obedience of the Savior. And thus the original sin and redemption of the world can be explained in a natural and magical sense. The astral light, or soul of the world, was the instrument of Adam's omnipotence. It became afterwards the instrument of his punishment, being corrupted and troubled by his sin, which intermingled an impure reflection with these primitive images, which composed the book of universal science for his still virgin imagination. This thing that he's describing actually represents the most difficult aspect of this cognitive protocol, right? I interacted with a Theory of Everything podcast comment section the other day, and the way that people have become boxed in due to the abject materialist kind of ontological model and all the crap that comes with that, that even if the evidence is overwhelming, but it's not the type of evidence that can really be codified or quantified, then it has to be dismissed outright. Right. So, for example, we have evidence for quantum consciousness and response-based adaptations in several organisms that are also context aware. Right. They are the acacia, for example, that's being hunted to extinction is being hunted, cut down, not hunted, cut down, hunted, whatever. For its tannins, it stops developing them. But not only does it do that, it did it within a season. Because whatever's managing the process knows that it's time sensitive. If this doesn't happen immediately, this organism will be extinct, right? And if it was just one organism, you could say, well, coincidence, but it's not. It's several of them. Okay, so we have those things, and then we have evidence for non-neural cognition all over the place, and on, right? But these things are only implying something. And even though common sense would tell you that if you take all of this evidence in aggregate, it actually strengthens each component, that they all exist simultaneously. They can't do that. And people are so determined to preserve their models, even if they're wrong, that they actually are eager to invalidate these things without really giving them due consideration. On the other hand, even though I've had a lot of experiences that suggest that certain entities are real and whatnot, I have to allow for the possibility of coincidence. I have to allow for the reality of subjective experience, and on and on. So I cannot really have certainty. Reincarnation, right? I had a bunch of experiences where I realized that I had the same habits as this person. I wore a smoking jacket in the morning. I drank my coffee the same way. I had my eggs the same way. I thought just like him, talked just like him, did the same stuff at the same ages, like, bedding a girl in my mom's bed and getting caught because an earring fell out at the same age. Earring got him caught, you know what I mean? Still not proof, because there is the possibility that archetypes kind of live in the same sort of pattern. It's like an algorithm. The universe is fractal, so there are patterns that are almost exactly the same, and we all inhabit one, section of that fractal, and on and on. We both are English, so ancestral memory is possible. And I think that this kind of navigation is something that most people cannot do and are not interested in doing. But if you really want to obtain truth and knowledge, you have to be willing to take it that far. And it takes a tremendous amount of training to maintain objectivity, to maintain an open mind, and avoid bias and selective perception. It really is a tremendous amount of work to get really good at that protocol for thought. The astral light, depicted in ancient symbols by the serpent devouring his tail, represents alternately malice and prudence, time and eternity, tempter and redeemer. For this light, being the vehicle of life, is an auxiliary alike of good and evil, and may be taken for the fiery form of Satan, as for the body of the Holy Ghost. By the way, the Ouroboros also, represents, what did he call it? What did he call it? The astral light, or, yeah, depicted in ancient symbols by the serpent devouring his own tail. Another reason for that is that the light is devouring itself. In Penrose's CCC theory, all particles have an antiparticle, and eventually they will collide, and all that's left is photons. So the light becomes matter, and then it consumes itself eternally. And then we have that on another level, as above, so below. The singularity occurs, the universe expands to the maximum point, all potential is exhausted, it collapses again, and then expands. And we can assume that there are larger versions of this process, possibly infinitely, sort of stacked on each other. It's turtles all the way down. It is the instrument of warfare in angelic battles, and indifferently feeds the flames of hell and the lightnings of St. Michael. It may be compared to a horse, having a nature analogous to the chameleon, and ever reflecting the armor of his rider. The astral light is the realization or form of the intellectual light, as the latter is the realization or form of the divine light. The great initiator of Christianity, divining that the astral light was overcharged with the impure reflections of Roman debauchery, sought to separate his disciples from the ambient sphere of reflections, and to make them attentive only to the interior light, so that through the medium of a common faith and enthusiasm, they might communicate together by new magnetic chains, which he termed grace, and thus overcome the dissolute currents, to which he gave the names of the devil and Satan, signifying their putrefaction. To oppose current to current is to renew the power of fluidic life. The revealers have, therefore, scarcely done more than divine, by the accuracy of their calculations, the appropriate moment for moral reactions. The law of realization produces what we call magnetic breathing. Places and objects become impregnated therewith, and this communicates to them an influence in conformity with our dominant desires, with those above all which are confirmed and realized by acts. As a fact, the universal agent, or latent astral light, ever seeks equilibrium. It fills the void and sucks up the plenitude, which makes vice contagious, like certain physical maladies, and works powerfully in the proselytism of virtue. Hence it is that cohabitation with antipathetic beings is a torment. Hence it is that relics, whether of saints or of great criminals, produce extraordinary results of sudden conversion and perversion. Hence it is that sexual love is often awakened by a breath or a touch, and this not only by means of the contact of the person himself, but of objects which he has unconsciously touched or magnetized. This is an outbreathing and inbreathing of the soul, exactly like that of the body. It breathes in the felicity which it believes, and it breathes forth ideas which result from its inner sensations. Diseased souls have an evil breath and vitiate their moral atmosphere. That is, they combine impure reflections with the astral light, which permeates them, and establish unwholesome currents therein. We are often invaded, to our astonishment, in society by evil thoughts which would have seemed impossible, and are not aware that they are due to some morbid proximity. This secret is of high importance, for it leads to the opening of consciences, one of the most incontestable and terrible powers of magical art. Magnetic respiration produces about the soul a radiation of which it is the center, and it surrounds it with the reflection of its works, creating for it a heaven or a hell. There are no isolated acts, and it is impossible that there should be secret acts. Whatsoever we truly will, that is, everything which we confirm by our acts, remains registered in the astral light where our reflections are preserved. These reflections continually influence our thought by the mediation of the diaphany, and it is in this sense that we become and maintain the children of our works. Now, there are certain situations in the United States right now that, in my opinion, are fooling millions and millions and millions of people. And even the people that aren't being fooled by it are fooled by their own side. And we perceive this as a consequence or an effect of instinct, right? Safety in numbers. So a lot of people that are joining the Trump train, they don't really care if they're actually Nazis or fascists or whatever. They just see it as safety in numbers. They don't care if they're really good. They just want to be on the side that's winning, and they perceive them to be winning. And so as this mass gets larger and larger and larger, from a psychologist point of view, or a behavioral anthropologist, or whatever, that's how you explain it. It's just safety in numbers, so when one group starts to get big, it has the potential to slurp up the entire thing, because that's what people do. This is another reason why the mainstream, they put so much energy into keeping the bulk hypnotized, because what's really going on is there is a magnetic compulsion, there's a magnetic attraction that is created by their dissonance, and that draws other people in. What we see happening in the world is largely a story that the universal mind and our subconscious is creating in order to explain interactions of energy. So, when we see these movements forming, it is because there is some sort of magnetism in the center of it. Magnetic respiration. So the astral light, transformed at the moment of conception into human light, is the soul's first envelope, and in combination with extremely subtle fluids, it forms the ethereal body or sidereal phantom, of which Paracelsus discourses in his philosophy of intuition, Philosophia Sagax. This sidereal body, setting itself free at death, attracts and for a long time preserves, through the sympathy of things homogeneous, the reflections of the past life. If drawn along a special current by a will which is powerfully sympathetic, it manifests naturally. For there's nothing more natural than prodigies. It is thus apparitions are produced, but we shall develop this point more fully in the chapter devoted to necromancy. Yikes. This fluidic body, subject, like the mass of the astral light, to two contrary movements, attracting on the left and repelling on the right, or reciprocally between the two sexes, begets various impulses within us and contributes to solicitudes of conscience. It is frequently influenced by reflections of other minds, and thus are produced on the one hand temptations, and on the other profound and unexpected graces. This is also the explanation of the traditional doctrine of two angels who strengthen and tempt us. The two forces of the astral light may be represented by a balance, wherein are weighed our good intentions for the triumph of justice and the emancipation of our liberty. The astral body is not always of the same sex as the terrestrial. That is, the proportions of the two forces, varying from right to left, frequently seem to gainsay the visible organization, producing the seeming vagaries of human passions and explaining, without in any sense normally justifying, the amorous peculiarities of Anacreon or Sappho. A skilled magnetizer should take all these subtle distinctions into account, and we shall provide in our ritual the rules for their recognition. There are two kinds of realization, the true and the fantastic. The first is the exclusive secret of magicians. The other belongs to enchanters and sorcerers. Mythologies are fantastic realizations of religious dogma. Superstitions are the secrecy of mistaken piety, sorcery of mistaken piety. But even mythologies and superstitions are more efficacious with human will than a purely speculative philosophy apart from any practice. Hence, St. Paul opposes the conquests of the folly of the cross to the inertness of human wisdom. Religion realizes philosophy by adapting it to the weakness of the vulgar. Oh man, that is sweet. Religion realizes philosophy by adapting it to the weaknesses of the vulgar. Such is for the Kabbalists the secret reason and occult explanation of the doctrine of incarnation and redemption. Now, we can look at ways that Christianity does that. It's a great example. If you want to create a society where there is no connection between the people, this is the first step in creating this divided populace that is being exploited as we speak, right? So it makes sense, and it's divinely ordained that others should suffer for your mistakes. This is the basic precedent for Christianity. And that, in and of itself, is enough to criminalize the religion, really, to ban it outright. You know, the mentality that it foments is anything but love thy neighbor. And it was designed with this in mind, you know. Somewhere he mentioned also that the separation between action and dogma, right? You see that with Christianity, you know, that people say, oh, well, it means all of this stuff that, you know, the Christian right, for example, doesn't observe any of it. None of it. And that preying on the weakness of these populations, you know, to give them the sense of moral superiority and validation, and also to put that exclusivity clause in there that if they're not with you, then they're not, you know, they're not going up to heaven. Can't use their book, it's all lies, got to use mine. You know, but they give them that sense of moral superiority, but then also the religion is inculcated with the opposite in practice. So that's a great example of exploiting the weakness, realizing a philosophy by exploiting the weakness of the vulgar. Thoughts untranslated into speech are thoughts lost for Humanity. Words unconfirmed by acts are idle words, and the idle word is not far removed from falsehood. Thought formulated by speech and confirmed by acts constitutes a good work or a crime. Hence, whether in vice or virtue, there is no speech for which we are not responsible. Above all, there are no indifferent acts. And so, then idle words being not far removed from falsehood, I'm not a person that's capable of small talk. I can't go hang around muggles and just like converse with them. I can't do it. And I don't want to do it. I feel like if you don't really have something to say, if we don't have an exchange available to us that has substance, then just shut up. Why profane the air? This is astral light, a permanent record of everything that happens. Why do you do this? And when you look at the culture and you realize how toxic and destructive and vapid it is, and then you look at this tendency to exchange banal, empty, pointless speech, that's what he's illustrating there. Curses and blessings invariably produce their consequence, and every action whatsoever its nature, whether inspired by love or hate, has effects analogous to its motive, its extent, and its direction. When that emperor, whose images had been mutilated, raising his hand to his face, exclaimed, "I do not feel that I am injured," he was mistaken in his valuation, and thereby detracted from the merit of his clemency. What man of honor could behold undisturbed an insult offered to his portrait? And did such insults, inflicted even unknown to ourselves, react on us by a fatal influence? Were the effects of bewitchment actual, as indeed an adept cannot doubt? How much more imprudent and ill-advised would seem this utterance of the good emperor. There are persons whom we can never offend with impunity, and if the injury we have done to them is mortal, we forthwith begin to die. There are those also whom we never meet in vain, whose mere glance alters the direction of our life. The basilisk who slays by a look is no fable. It is a magical allegory. Generally speaking, it is bad for health to have enemies. We can never brave with impunity the reprobation of anyone. If you come fucking with me, make sure you know what you're doing. Got ninjas know what they're rolling with me. Generally speaking, it is bad for health to have enemies, and we can never brave with impunity the reprobation of anyone. Before opposing ourselves to a given force or current, we must be well assured that we possess the contrary force, or are with the stream of the contrary current. Otherwise, we shall be crushed or struck down, and many sudden deaths have no other cause than this. The terrible visitations of Nadab and Abin, of Osa, of Ananias, and Sapphira were occasioned by electric currents of outraged convictions. The sufferings of the Ursulines of London, of the nuns of Louviers, and of the convulsionaries of Jansenism were identical in principle and are explicable by the same occult natural laws. Had not Urban Grandier been immolated, one of two things would have occurred. Either the possessed nuns would have died in frightful convulsions, or the phenomena of diabolical frenzy would have so gained in strength and in influence epidemically that Grandier, notwithstanding his knowledge and his reason, would himself have become hallucinated, and to such a degree that he would have slandered himself like the unhappy Goffrey, or would otherwise have perished suddenly with all the appalling characteristics of poisoning or of divine vengeance. In the 18th century, the unfortunate poet Gilbert fell a victim to his audacity in braving the current of opinion and actual philosophical fanaticism which characterized his epoch. Guilty of philosophical treason, he died raving mad, possessed by the most incredible terrors, as if God himself had punished him for defending his cause out of season. As a fact, he perished by reason of a law of nature of which he could know nothing. He set himself against an electric current and was struck down as by lightning. Had Marat not been assassinated by Charlotte Corday, he would have been destroyed infallibly by a reaction of public opinion. It was the execration of the honest which afflicted him with leprosy, and he would have had to succumb there too. The reprobation excited by the massacre of St. Bartholomew was the sole cause of the atrocious disease and death of Charles IX. While had not Henry IV been sustained by an immense popularity, which he owed to the projecting power of sympathetic force of his astral life, he would scarcely have outlived his conversion, but would have perished under the contempt of Protestants, combined with the suspicion and ill will of Catholics. Unpopularity may be a proof of integrity and courage, but never a policy or prudence. Unpopularity may be a proof of integrity and courage. Thus, but never of policy or prudence. The words inflicted by opinion are mortal for statesmen. We may recall the premature and violent end of many illustrious persons whom it would be inexpedient to mention here. Disgraces in public opinion may often be great injustices, but nonetheless, nonetheless, they are invariably occasions of ill success and frequently of a death sentence. In return, acts of injustice done to one individual can and should, if they rest unrepaired, cause the loss of an entire nation or of a whole society. This is what is called the cry of blood, for at the bottom of every injustice there is the germ of homicide. By reason of these terrible laws of solidarity, Christianity recommends so strongly the forgiveness of injuries and reconciliation. He who dies unforgiving casts himself dagger-armed into eternity and condemns himself to the horrors of an eternal murder. The efficacy of paternal or maternal blessings or curses is an invincible popular tradition and belief. As a fact, the closer the bonds which unite two persons, the more terrible are the consequences of hatred between them. The brand of Althea, burning the blood of Meleager, is the mythological symbol of this terrible power. Let parents be ever on their guard, for no one can kindle hell in his own blood and devote his own issue to misfortune without himself being burnt and made wretched. To pardon is never a crime, but to curse is always a danger and an evil action. And that's what's up. Somebody said that no one attacks Judaism. I would have to say that's one of the most outright untrue things I've ever heard in my life. Did you see where scientists solidified light? No, but I would like to see that. Oh yeah, they made matter from light. If that's what you're talking about, yeah, I did read about that. How do we feel about Jews here? Which Jew? I don't do that with the whole classification of entire races or religions and whatnot. Generally. I'll make generalizations for sure, and it is true that, you know, a lot of the things that people say about certain power structures are definitely true, and there are some practices that are pretty iffy, but I don't condemn anyone based on any, you know, there are good and bad people everywhere, and the thing is, you have certain groups within certain groups that come to define entire groups, and a lot of the Western mystery tradition is based on Jewish mysticism, you know, the fundamentals of it. So we're very appreciative of them, but we don't really like the Israel brand very much. I don't anyways. All right, let's do one more chapter. I would do more. I'm just so hungry. I don't know why. I just ate dinner, but I guess I didn't get enough yogurt. I'm tempted to go get another cup of yogurt or something. I haven't had as much to say about this as usual. I think this one I will, though. Initiation. Here we go. The initiate is he who possesses the lamp of Trismegistus, the mantle of Apollonius, and the staff of the patriarchs. The lamp of Trismegistus is reason illuminated by science. The mantle of Apollonius is full and complete self-possession, which isolates the stage from blind tendencies. And the staff of the patriarchs is the help of the secret and everlasting forces of nature. Now, In most religious systems, when you take initiation or you join them, you eat your wafer or whatever you do to become a Catholic, you get, what is that, confirmed or something like that. You're basically saying, I am a sheep now, and I am going to follow the herd, and, whatever dogma is dictated to me, that's what I'm going to try to do. Not here. Not here. Reason, illuminated by science. Full and complete self-possession, which isolate the sage from blind tendencies. We're not groping in the dark for nothing. And the staff of the patriarchs is the help of the secret and everlasting forces of nature, which you must know consciously in order to exploit. The lamp of Trismegistus enlightens present, past, and future, lays bare the conscience of men, and manifests the inmost recesses of the female heart. The lamp burns with a triple flame, the mantle is thrice folded, and the staff is divided into 3 parts. The number 9 is that of divine reflections. It expresses the divine idea in all its abstract power, but it also signifies extravagance in belief, and hence superstition and idolatry. The divine idea in all of its abstract power is truth. And the reason that 9 is the number of truth is that 9 times anything reduced is 9 again. Truth is always the truth. But it is also the number of illusion, hence the superstition and idolatry. The light reflected on the moon is 9 on the Kabbalistic tree of life. And everything about the moon, the distance from the earth, the diameter of it, and other features, all reduced to 9. Which they couldn't have known back when the Kabbalah was created. So kind of what that's about. For this reason, Hermes has made it the number of initiation, because the initiate reigns over superstition and by superstition, and alone can advance to the darkness, leaning on his staff, enveloped in his mantle, lighted by his lamp. Reason has been given to all men, but all do not know how to make use of it. It is a science to be acquired. Liberty is offered to all, but not all can be free. It is a right that must be earned. Force is for all, but all do not know how to rest upon it. It is a power that must be seized. We attain nothing without more than one effort. The destiny of man is that he should enrich himself with what he gains, and that he should afterwards have, like God, the glory and pleasure of dispensing it. Magic was called formerly the sacerdotal art and the royal art, because initiation gave empire over souls to the sage and the adroitness for ruling wills. Divination is also one of the privileges of the initiate. Now, divination is simply the knowledge of effects contained in causes in science applied to the facts of the universal dogma of analogy. Nothing is woo. Like I make predictions that go way beyond what you can explain rationally all the time, and I can make a claim like that because I challenge you to go back through all my videos and, say it ain't so. You can't. And it's not a matter of necessarily being a prophet or using supernatural powers. It is about paying attention to everything. It is about having extremely developed pattern recognition. And there are instances where it seems like there's something more to it than that, some sort of intelligence that occasionally sort of leaks things through some sort of subconscious resonant bleed or something. But this is a fact. What he said about how it's a privilege of the initiate, but it's a knowledge of effects contained in causes and science applied to the facts of the universal dogma of analogy. And the universal dogma of analogy, a great example of that is that Mercury is the closest planet to the sun, right? And whoever named it that didn't have in their mind that Mercury had 99 protons and gold 98. And so this is the dogma of analogy as it is presented by the universal mind, and sometimes bleeds, as I was saying, through the individual subconscious and the collective as well. Another really weird example of this is that mercury, the metal, is used in moats in a subgroup of the Aztecs around the sarcophagus of buried royalty or dead royalty, and it's there to help them to cross over into the land of the dead. Mercury, the entity, is also a psychopomp that ferries people across to the land of the dead. There is no connection in a way, because Mercury the metal was not called Mercury in the Aztec subgroup. And yet there is this connection. And when we're talking about initiates being able to see things that most people do not see, this is one such thing. And so, you develop the ability to see connections and to have a better understanding, a better map of the fractals that underlie the manifestations of the universal mind by being able to see these finer connections. Human acts are not alone written in the astral light. Their traces are left upon the face. They modify mien and carriage. They change the tone of the voice. Thus, every man bears about him the history of his life, which is legible for the initiate. Now, the future is ever the consequence of the past, and unexpected circumstances do not appreciably alter results reasonably calculated. Damn. That made me feel a little bit bad right there, because it's true, and ouch, man, that kind of stung. The destiny of each man can be therefore foretold him. An entire existence can be judged by a single movement. One piece of awkwardness may be the presage of a long chain of misfortunes. Caesar was assassinated because he was ashamed of being bald. Napoleon ended his days at St. Helena because he admired the poems of Ossian. Louis Philippe abdicated the throne as he did because he carried an umbrella. These are paradoxes for the vulgar, who cannot grasp the occult relations of things, but they are causes for the adept, who understands all and is surprised at nothing. Initiation is a preservative against the false lights of mysticism. It equips human reason with its relative value and proportional infallibility, connecting it with supreme reason by the chain of analogies. Hence, the initiate knows no doubtful hopes, no absurd fears, because he has no irrational beliefs. He is acquainted with the extent of his power, and he can dare without danger. For him, therefore, to dare is to be able. Here, then, is a new interpretation of his attributes. His lamp represents learning, the mantle which enwraps him with his discretion. His staff is the emblem of his strength and daring. He knows, he dares, and he is silent. He knows the secrets of the future. He dares in the present, and he is silent in the past. He knows the failings of the human heart. He dares make use of them to achieve his work, and he is silent as to his purposes. He knows the principle of all symbolisms and of all religions. He dares to practice or to abstain from them without hypocrisy and without impiety. And he is silent upon the one dogma of supreme initiation. He knows the existence and nature of the great magical agent. He dares perform the acts and give utterance to the words which make it subject to human will. And he is silent upon the mysteries of the great arcanum. So may you find him often melancholy, never dejected or despairing, often poor, never abject or miserable, persecuted often, never disheartened or conquered. He remembers the bereavement and murder of Orpheus, the exile and the lonely death of Moses, the martyrdom of the prophets, the torture of Apollonius, the cross of the Savior. He knows the dissolution in which Agrippa died, whose memory is even now slandered. He knows what labors overcame the great Paracelsus and all that Raymond Lilly was condemned to undergo that he might finish by a violent death. He remembers Swedenborg simulating madness and even losing reason in order to excuse his science. St. Martin and his hidden life, Cagliostro, who perished forsaken in the cells of the Inquisition, Cazotte, who ascended the scaffold. Inheritor of so many victims, he does not dare the less, but he understands better the necessity for silence. Let us follow his example. Let us learn diligently. When we know, let us have courage, and let us be silent. Let's see. I'm not really into this. See ya. It's funny, somebody's asking another question about Judaism in the other. Does Judaism practice black magic? Let me go into my little thingy here and set my screen up differently so that this isn't so weird. And we'll have a little chat about just what just went down. That last bit was solid. I was pretty happy about that. All right, guys. So if you have questions, comments, subjects that you would like me to riff on a bit before I change over to my other job as a guitarist, I had a major breakthrough last night. I don't know why. I was playing. I wasn't focusing on anything, and I just suddenly something clicked, and I was just a better player by like a reasonably large margin. So that was great. I was really happy about that. I got to get back on that. Saturday, we're having another music stream, and I'm going to be in good condition for that, I think. Surgery on Monday. Still trying to raise funds to offset the difficulties that we have incurred due to my health problems, and also to build this channel up. In order to make the channel grow, I have to put money into it, and I cannot justify putting money into it that doesn't come out of it. So if you guys support me, maybe we can blow this up a little bit, and I can get some, better editing equipment and do some paid promotion and whatnot, and we can grow this community some. But demonetized, so if we don't get support from you guys, then we're not going nowhere. Okay, so let me check the chat and see if we have any input. Learning flamenco, nice, sounds awesome. Gods that Moses. Okay, guys, just waiting for some input from someone. Let me see what the next chapter is about. Yeah, we're going to start there next time. All right, well, I'll go ahead and offer some thoughts, I guess, then. I mean, he said it all so well. It's kind of difficult, really, to add anything to that. You can't overstate the importance of the integration of this approach to developing oneself, spiritually and otherwise. We have sort of all been inculcated with this belief that opinion is, that all truth is opinion. There's so much that has, I guess, come to us in the form of propaganda, whether deliberate or conveniently emergent, that serves the purposes of maintaining this misguided paradigm. You see it in nearly every aspect of the culture. The anti-intellectual gestalt of the mainstream culture, the vapidity and shallowness of the music. Even in parts of the culture where it seems like they're trying to build free thought and personal freedom, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And your truth is true for you. You know, we used to hear that a lot. I think that's kind of gone away, I hope, because it's not true. It's true to a very small extent, but it's not objectively true. You can believe things as hard as you want that aren't true, and they're going to remain untrue. You know what I mean? This kind of engineering of very faulty, falsehood-based belief systems, and the demonization of the integration of all of the things that would help one to overcome them and to see past them, to get around them. You see this in the ayahuasca culture, where the trend has become just monkey, imitating monkey, believing whatever you're told you're supposed to believe after you drink ayahuasca, instead of using it as a tool to develop yourself intellectually, to learn to discern between wish demons and truth, to overcome your own biases, to achieve detached objectivity and analysis. We've been taught that faith is a virtue. Faith in the absence of evidence, when it's in conflict with reason and common sense, that your spiritual achievement is measured by your level of delusion. And then we have the people that are not spiritual seeing this and going, these people are fucking morons. And then we have the overlords, many of whom know the truth, watching all this and laughing at how easy it is to keep almost the entirety of the population from realizing truth that they stare in the face every day of their lives. Barely occulted, hiding in plain sight. And yet, remaining completely invisible to the overwhelming majority of people. They've been convinced that it doesn't exist, that if it does, you can't find it. You're not going to learn what you don't want to know. And you're not going to look for something that you don't think is there. You're not going to see something that you don't think is there, even. Herd conformity pressure. The lamp of the initiate. The light itself. What the hell? Is how did he put it? I want to find this real quick. Here we go. The light itself is the initiate's full and complete self-possession, self-definition, self-awareness. Follow the herd, you're just another cow. Moo, motherfucker. I think he's asking about music. Did I start with blues? I definitely did not. Still don't really ever play blues or blues rock. Except I did the other day, and it came out really well. I've actually cut up some of the highlights and posted them on TikTok and various places. Not seeing color when you take psilocybin. You feel like you broke a crystal in your head. How do we have no one in the vertical? That's so strange. The vertical used to get like, that was the one that got hundreds and hundreds, and there's always zero. Have you been one of the people who's shown, you have been one of the people who's impossible to be spiritual and rational? That is exactly my goal. And the reality is the absence, or the, not absence, but you reason is spirit, you know, this weaponized spirituality that we've all been inundated with, whether it's the institutionalized religions or the New Age movement with all of their wacky bullshit. The idea that we have to abandon reason and common sense, that's the word I was looking for, abandon reason and common sense in order to have knowledge of spirituality is the complete opposite of the truth. It's the complete opposite of the truth. The same people that tell you that will tell you that this world is a reflection of the energetic or spiritual world. Well, it can't be both, you know, like what you have to remember that we really live in a world where most people are just regurgitating things that they've heard that they think they're supposed to say. It really is true. You know, I've been interacting with a lot of people in comment sections lately, and that fact has been driven home so hard. You have a certain type of person, and they say whatever they think they're supposed to in order to virtue signal to the other people in their demographic. There's not a seed of actual analysis or thinking, or, you know what I mean? The overwhelming majority of people are just automatons cognitively. It's just the fact. Even a lot of highly intelligent people are just running scripts, you know, that free radical that real initiates represent is really a needle in a haystack amongst the human race, you know, and we have to remember not to have any animosity, not to despise them for this, because without them, we would not be able to live the lives that we need to live in order to do what we do. We lean on all of them. We all lean on each other. You know, and this is another reason why when we have this impulse, we have to, this wannabe Prometheus thing, you know, we have to wake them all up. It is true that they might get us all enslaved or allow us all to be enslaved, or we won't have enough numbers to stop it from happening, or even all killed, unalived. Sorry, algorithm, you know. If they don't wake up, that is a fact. They represent an existential threat, and more so every day with each passing day. But nevertheless, you know, if everyone woke up at once and refused to play along, what would we do? The tower would fall over. You know, the blasted tower would get blasted. The thing is, that's happening one way or another right now with AI and a lot of other things that are happening in the world. That toppling is definitely in the works. So this is the time that we are all called to increase our magnetism, to increase our level of knowledge, to increase our presence in ourselves and in the world, and make what effort is possible. Fool's errand or no, we got nothing better to do. You know? For good or for ill, win or lose, this is our moment. Better try to own it. Sounds like storms are rolling in, you guys. I'm probably going to Whipping Post is the best jam track. Yeah, I'll play that on Saturday for sure. I do not see any questions or suggestions for anything in here. So, all right, guys, I guess I'm going to check out, and then tomorrow I'll be back with the Elon takedown. Please share these videos, man. They're really important. Particularly this last segment. Like I said, I'm going to cut them up. I'm going to cut them up and put them out so they're more easy to just digest in single pieces. Plus, the first 2 chapters we read weren't that amazing, and then the last one was. And I hate it when that happens because it needs to open with something people are going to pay attention to. Do you think there is possibility that there are genuine NPCs, philosophical zombies that don't have internal experience and are just all? That's definitely real. By the way, you guys, hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron. We are demonetized, so we get no support, and I've had some issues lately that I need to rebound from, and we're having events in Sacred Valley until into April, and in May in the jungle, and then back in Sacred Valley in July. So if you're interested in that, shoot me an email. Okay, but this NPC thing, yeah, and some of the world leaders, I think all of them probably are those type of automatons. We think of NPCs as being like the Walmart grocery bagger or whatever. That's not always true, first of all. I've met some people that were so illuminated that, like one in 100 million types that were just doing like just normal shit that you would, you would never know until you really talk to them. But at the other end too, I think people like George Bush and Donald Trump and Joe Biden are pretty much just automatons. They're just kind of going through motions, operating on subconscious default patterns. That's absolutely true. And actually, 1 in 5 people does not have a internal narrator. There's no internal voice. I don't understand how they think. I guess they just don't think. They just do stuff. But NPCs are definitely real. Definitely 100%. In fact, I think most people are, the masses basically operate like that. The thing is, you cannot dehumanize them over it, because they still love their children. They still have hopes and dreams. They're still real people in a sense. But yeah, that whole non-player character thing is definitely completely real. And of course, our goal, we talk about awakening, right? But what is that? It really just means that we are decreasing the ratio of automatic, subconscious to conscious processes. That's what the whole thing is about, So when you realize that there are people that are at a different level in that way, that's what that is. It really is. I think Daniel Dennett may have been an NPC just running complex informational processing. I don't know who that is. But yeah, guys. So I'm gonna call it for tonight, and I will be back tomorrow. We're not missing the Elon thing, no matter what. This time, I've got so much to say about that. I know it's gonna upset some people, but do I look like I care? Really? I mean, this stuff has to be dealt with. We're in so much trouble. People need to snap out of it, and if they don't snap out of it immediately, then we have no hope of winning any kind of revolution or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. There's not going to be any mass awakening. There's not going to be nothing. The first step in people's awakening process is to snap out of their political indoctrination. Until that happens, they're lost. There's nothing, you know what I mean? As soon as somebody tells me, basically, and I'm sorry if this applies to you, as soon as anyone tells me they still believe in either of the U.S. political parties, I'm pretty much like, I'm talking to a wall from my point of view. You know what I mean? There's no point, like, beyond that moment. So, cheers, you guys. I'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Please turn on your bell notifications and hit the like button and the subscribe and join the Patreon and all that stuff, and I'll see you tomorrow.